So I'm fortunate to be here today with the Deputy Leader of the Conservative Party, the Honourable Candice Bergen, and I gave our Deputy Leader a very important and innovative assignment. I wanted her to do some specific outreach across corporate Canada on something called ESG. Conservatives are very proud of our natural resource sector, from energy in Alberta and Saskatchewan, forestry, mines and minerals, and we are leaders in ESG, but most Canadians wouldn't know what ESG is. What is it, Candice?
Well, I didn't know what ESG was, so it's been a lot of fun to learn about it and to find out how Canada is and will continue to be a leader in ESG. So ESG stands for environment, social, and governance. And it is kind of a mechanism where right across the globe, investors, companies are looking at how they treat the environment, treat social responsibility, and how they manage the governance of their own company or their own sector. So it's ESG, you might have even heard of it, some folks might have heard of it, the Mark Carneys of this world like to talk about it, but what we're finding out as Conservatives is Canada, and whether it's our oil and gas sector, our agricultural sector, mining, right across the country, Canada is already leading the way in ESG. And we can be an ESG superpower. So the interesting things that I'm finding out is that a Conservative government led by Prime Minister Erin O'Toole can incentivize businesses to continue to lead in ESG, to be better on ESG. We're already at the top, virtually at the top, especially when it comes to the S and the G, the social and the governance. And on the environment, we are right there as well. So we can lead, and then we can really champion Canadian natural resources, Canadian agriculture. We can champion what we are doing on the world stage and attract that investment.
Absolutely, and many Canadian companies, from Teck to Suncor to others, are already investing huge in getting their emissions down. So they're working on the E part of ESG. And the great thing about Canada is if we say we're lowering emissions, we have regulatory processes that are transparent. We're a high governance country. You can trust what a regulator in Alberta or in Ottawa says. Unlike other countries that might export energy or these resources, anytime we replace Canadian energy, Canadian forestry, Canadian minerals, it's replaced by a country that will be way behind us on ESG.
Exactly. And you know, you look at the last 6 years, having a Liberal government and a Prime Minister he wants to phase out the oil sands, and he's constantly talking down our natural resources. Imagine a Conservative government that goes on the world stage and stands up proudly for our Canadian natural resources, for every sector in our country. Imagine what that will do and how it will promote, and rightly so. If we want to reduce global emissions, the world needs more of Canada, which is, I believe, an ESG superpower, and we can even be more of a superpower under a Conservative government.
We can leverage that for capital investment to be the top destination for capital, top destination for talent, engineers, geologists, people that want to work in industry and agriculture. And you know, I have a special plan to add one more letter to the acronym. Yes. I want it to be ESGI. Because the Indigenous partnerships we're seeing are really incredible. Just this last week, I was speaking to the head of the Canadian Association of Aboriginal Business, and she told me last year Suncor spent $904 million through Aboriginal-led supply chain companies. So the ESGI potential is huge. Are you hearing that as well?
It's fantastic, Aaron, and everyone that I'm talking to, when I tell them that you want to add the I to it, it's a lot of nods, and what a fantastic idea, because that is a really important part of what we are doing in Canada. And not just, it's about reconciliation, but it's also about securing the future for Indigenous people, giving them the opportunities to be able to access the resources, be able to make money, to be able to offer jobs to Indigenous people on reserve, off reserve. You know, we see the elite, the Davos elite, as I said, the Mark Carneys, who like to go around shaking their finger at Canadian industry, Canadian oil and gas, Canadian mining. And it's time we put a stop to that. As Conservatives, we have a lot to brag about as Canadians.
Absolutely. That condescension we see from many of the Liberal insiders like Mr. Carney, that actually drives jobs and investment out of Canada, but the world still uses these resources. So who
That's
do they
right.
use it from? They use it from Venezuela or Russia. And, none of those countries take ESG. Look at China. They're still violating the Montreal Protocol that was meant on fixing the ozone layer. They sign treaties and don't even follow them. So Canada, I think, ESGI world leader. You're learning this can be a real marketing tool for us to say, if you're a democratic country, if you care about human rights, the environment, social governance, Indigenous peoples, and economic reconciliation, you better buy your resources from Canada.
Exactly. And when you're talking about China, they're not even on, when you think about social and governance and you look at the genocide that's going on there, you look at the trampling on human rights, on freedoms. I mean, anybody who wants to talk about ESG has to acknowledge that Canada is at the top and that we are leaders. So I think we've just got a fantastic opportunity and we can own this and Canada can own it.
Absolutely. And we've got $500 billion worth of debt accumulated in COVID. We've got the highest unemployment rate really amongst the G7. We're going to need all sectors of the economy firing, including natural resources. So Trudeau's 6 years of attacks on these sectors, we're going to actually try and work with them, help them maintain that ESG leadership, and get Canadians back to work. Indigenous Canadians, let them be full partners in these projects. I think Canadians can be proud of the resources. As I said, the resources in our ground or in our heads. We should be proud of what we do here in Canada.
Exactly.
Well, thank you. The assignment continues, but I really think this can be a way Conservatives show we can be proud of our natural resource sectors. We can get carbon emissions down. We can partner with Indigenous Canadians. I think that's what is exciting about our Conservative vision of securing the future for all Canadians.